So now let's create the scraping automation that goes to realtor.com, it scrapes all of the houses and posts it to LinkedIn using ChatGPT and with the Google Sheet integration to keep track of everything. So what we'll do first is to schedule the trigger to run at 9 a.m. every day, and once it triggers, it will go to realtor.com, but more specifically to this Los Angeles single family homes that we have here that filters by city, type of house, and the house price. And once we're inside this page, we'll use Automa to scrape all of the houses, including the image, the description, the price, the address, and so on. And then once we have the data scraped, we'll send everything to make.com so we can use all of that data to feed ChatGPT with a prompt so we can create some copy for the LinkedIn post. And then after that, we'll also integrate it with Google Sheets so it logs every run and so we can keep track of everything. And of course, last but not least, we'll post the image and the description that ChatGPT made to LinkedIn. So yeah, now let's get building. Now here in Automa, just create a new workflow. Okay, so first of all, we'll double click on the trigger and hit on edit triggers so we can change its schedule. So let's go ahead and delete this one. And then click on add trigger and select on a specific day. In this case, we wanna run it on every day. So in select day, just check all of the days. Now that you have selected the days, just exit out of here and click on this little clock icon and select the time. And in this case, we wanna select 9 a.m. because we wanna trigger every day at 9 a.m. So once you have all these settings, then just click on add time. And as you can see, it creates this little list of all the days, and if you click on the drop down, you can see the hour of each day in which it'll trigger. So now you have configured your trigger to run at 9 a.m. at every day. So now let's actually get building the blocks. So what we want to do first is, like we did before, is to open a new window. So let's go back here and search for new window. You can also pick the new tab lock, but in this case I want to keep everything organized. That's why I created a new window. So now, like always, double click it and let's change its description to openrealtor.com. And then where it says URL, we just want to copy and paste the URL that we have. I already have my URL prepared here. So let's just copy and paste that back into Automa. So now let's save it and run to see what it does. So I just clicked on execute, and as you can see, it opened the link successfully. So far so good, nothing too complicated. But this is where the magic starts happening. As you can see, we have this realtor.com page. So what we want to do in this case is to scrape not just one house like we did in the last automation, but to scrape multiple houses, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, even 100, 1,000. So to do that, we can technically click on this element, then scrape all of the data and so on, and repeat those blocks on and on for all of the houses. But that will simply take too much space in Automa. So in this case, when we want to loop over a bunch of elements, well, we use the loop block, which is here. Just search for loop and select loop elements. And whenever you want to loop through elements, you also want to select this block, which is called loop break, because whenever you open a loop you want to close it, or else weird things start to happen. Now here let's configure the loop element block. So just double click it. And in the description we don't have to name it anything because the loop element block is already self-explanatory. But in the loop ID, just name it something super simple. In my case, I'm going to name it houses. And then in the loop break block, you can see that we have to input a loop ID so it knows what loop to actually break and stop. So just type in houses, which is the loop ID we have, and that's it. Okay, now let's do a little pause so we know what's actually happening. So everything between the loop blocks will get looped. So all of the steps we have will be in between both of these blocks, okay? But before that, we actually have to specify what to loop in this loop element block. So what we want to loop is this whole list of houses. So again, in the CSS selector and element selector thing, we have to select the list of houses. Like last time, you have to bring this tab on top of Automa and then click on the select an element button. And now that we have the selector enabled, we don't want to just click on one element, but we want to enable this list button so that we can select a whole list. And as you can see, whenever I hover my mouse on top of a house, it selects all of the houses, which is the list. So just click on it so we can select the list. So now that we have the whole list selected, we don't have to click on select element. But as you can see down below, we have this other list which resembles the elements. So if I hover on the first element gets selected. If I hover on the second element gets selected, and so on. So just focus on the first element and copy its class. So select this button here and it will copy everything. Now go back to Automa and paste it right there. And of course, as always, enable the wait for selector option. And here where it says max data to loop, this is the amount of houses that will loop over. So in this case, I'm just going to select 2 so it doesn't take long when I show you the example. And then down below here where it says load more elements, you want to click on scroll down and change this from 5 seconds to 30 seconds and disable scroll to bottom. So what this does is it just lets Automa scroll along the elements. Now we can actually start building the blocks inside the loop elements. So now I'm just going to go back to the realtor.com page so I can show you the exact steps we'll follow to scrape the houses. So what we'll do is actually open the first element on a new tab, go to that tab, then scrape all of the data we need, then close this tab, go back to our original tab, and then on to the second one and repeat that process how many times we want. So that's exactly what we'll do now. So let's go back to Automa and then delete this connection so we can put in the blocks in between. So now, like we said, we have to open a new tab, but we won't use the new tab block because it's not really optimized as well. In this case, let's just select the link block and place it next to the loop element block. So now let's go inside the settings of this link block and name it accordingly. So I'm just going to name it Open House Tab, and that's it. Now where it says element selector, like always, we need to bring up this page and click on the select an element button. So like I mentioned before, sometimes this icon disappears, so just enable it. And now we have to select the list of houses again. So be sure that this list button is enabled. So I'm going to enable it again. And then select the list of houses that we previously selected. So it was this one. And then once you have selected the list, you have to click on the element of the list. So in this case, I'm going to select this one so we can open it in a new tab. So just click on this. So now we have the whole list selected and the sub element selected. And then in the attributes tab over here, just open it. And in the first element, search for area label and then copy it and paste it into your element selector. And after that, as always, enable wait for selector. And in this case, we're going to open this element in a new tab. So enable open in a new tab. So now let's quickly test this. So I'm going to save and then I'm going to run this again. So it's opening the realtor.com page. And now it should open this first element in a new tab. And boom, as you can see, it opened it automatically. So far, so good. Okay, so on to the next steps. Now we actually want to scrape all of the data inside each house. So in this case, we're going to scrape the price, the bedrooms, the bathrooms, the size, the address, the description, and of course the image. So let's start with the price. First, go back to Automa and select the get text block. So grab the get text block and put it beside your link block. Now let's go into its settings and describe it. So in this case, it's going to be named get price. And for the element selector, as always, pop your page on top of Automa, then click on the select an element button and select the actual price. And in this case, it's okay to click on select an element. So just click on select element and as always, enable wait for selector and that's it. Now we actually have to specify where to save this piece of data. So like last time, we have to save it to a table. And luckily, I already created my table and connected it. But if you didn't, you can do that right now. And after you have done that, click on select an element and this little drop down will appear. And then select in which column you want to save this data. And this is the price, so I'm going to save it inside the price column. Okay, and then what did we say we were going to do? We were going to open the first house in a new tab. We could use a new tab block, but in this case, it wouldn't be so effective. So we're going to use the link block. So now let's go and search for link. And as you can see, the link block is right here. And let's just drag it beside the loop elements block. Now in the description, let's name it open house tab. Just so we're organized. And as always, enable wait for selector. And since we're going to open the house in a new tab, we have to enable open in a new tab as well. And now to select the actual element, remember to pop up the page you're going to use and then click on select an element. So now that we're with the selector open, you first have to click this list icon right here. This is so you can select the whole list. And now let's actually select the list in the website. So to do that, just hover over some elements and here. So right now I'm selecting the list and let's just click. And this next step is very important. Instead of clicking the select element button, you actually have to select the element that you will click first. So in this case, we're going to click this part right here. So just click that. So in short, you first have to select the list and then the actual element inside that list that you will click. And once you've done that, you can now click on the select element button. Okay, so now that this element is selected inside Automa, we're going to have to find the div tag. So to do that, just search it right here. And as you can see, we have this div tag right here, and here you have to delete everything to the left of the div and the div included. So just find the first div that's shown and delete everything to the left of it, including the div tag. So I'm just gonna select this and delete it. And now just type in this tag, which is open bracket, loop data at, and then whatever you named your loop. In this case, I named it houses, so I'm gonna type in houses, and then close bracket, and that's it. Now let's click on save and let's run it again to see what happens. So it's opening the realtor.com site, and it should open the first house, which is this one, in a new link, in a new tab I mean. And yes, it's opening in a new tab, so it's working. And of course right now it's not looping because we haven't completely finished the Automa flow yet. Okay, and now that we're inside the actual house, we have all of this data to scrape. And first on our list is the price, so let's scrape the price right now. So in the block selector, let's search for get text, because the price is in a text format, and let's connect it to our flow. Now let's double click on get text and name it. In this case it's for the price, so I'm just gonna name it get price. Then as always, wait for selector and include it, and let's save it to the price column, which is right here. And then to select the actual text, let's pop this page on top of Automa and click on select an element. Now super simple, let's just select the price and click on select element. And the next thing we're gonna scrape are the amount of bedrooms. So to be lazy, let's just copy and paste this block and plug it right next to our flow. And now let's change the description so we don't mistake it. In this case it's get bedrooms, and change the column to bedroom instead of price. Then the wait for selector option is already enabled, so now let's select the actual element. So let's pop this page right on top and click on select element. So now let's select the amount of bedrooms, which is 2, and let's just click it and select element. Wait, I was actually scraping the bathrooms and I noticed that instead of selecting this whole thing, we can select this little number. So yeah, and now we have to do the bathroom, the size and the address, and I'm gonna put it in a quick time lapse because you already know these steps. Okay, so I just finished scraping these elements. So up to now we have the price, the amount of bedrooms, the amount of bathrooms, the address and the size. So what's next is the actual description. And for the description or property details, it's a little bit tricky because we actually have to click this show more button. And as you can see, it shows a lot more text. And the other tricky part is that some property details don't actually have this show more button because their descriptions are short. So we actually have to create 2 flows so we don't get any errors. And the first condition would be if we do have a show more button, and the second condition would be if we don't have a show more button. And that's very simple to replicate in Automa, so let's just see. So back in Automa we can actually search for conditions, and let's just drag the conditions right here and connect it to our flow. And here if we double click it, we actually have to add 2 paths. So first let's add the first path, so click on add path, and in path 1 select this pencil icon to edit it. And here let's just go inside and click on the first value and select element exist. So this will check if an element exists or not, in this case the show more button. So now it actually is, and now it's telling us to select the actual element. So right again, pop this tab open on top of Automa and click on select element. So now enable the eye icon and click on show more, copy it and paste it right here. And that's the first path. So now let's close this, and now let's add a new path, edit the path, add a condition, and in the first box where it says value, select element not exists. And then again we have to paste the first selector. So now what we have are 2 paths. The first path would be if we do have a show more button, and the second path would be if we don't have a show more button. Okay, so let's say we do have the show more button. What should we be doing? So if we do have the show more button, we actually have to click it and then scrape all of the data. So let's do that in Automa. So let's go back to the block selector and find the click element block and drag it right here. And remember to connect the first path to it because this is the path where the show more button actually exists. And then in the click element settings, let's just paste the same selector of the show more button, enable wait for selector, and let's just name it click show more. Okay, and now the next step was to actually scrape the data. So let's get a get text block right here. Let's connect it to our flow, double click on it, Now let's name it. We should name it get description. And let's save the description to the description column. Enable wait for selector. And let's actually select the element. So pop this page right here. Let's click on select an element. Enable the eye icon if you can't see it. And I don't know why there's two, but let's just select the whole thing. Copy it and paste it right here. And in path 2 we don't actually have the show more button, so we can just connect path 2 directly to the get text because we don't need to click on the element that doesn't even exist. Okay, so that's how you can get that description and have conditions. So up to now we actually have this whole flow which is getting pretty big, so I'm just gonna save this. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to add was the delete data block, so we don't get a table full of rubbish. So let's select the delete data block and plug it after the trigger and before the actual flow. And double click delete data, add data from the table we have and select all columns. Okay, so this is good. Now let's click on save and execute this whole thing. So it's opening. Okay, I just opened a new tab and I think it's gonna be finished. Okay, it opened the property details and I think it's finished. So let's go check the storage real quick. And yeah, we have the address. The image URL is empty because we haven't scraped the image URL yet. The bedroom, the bathroom, the price, the size, which is in square feet, and the description. Okay, so far so good, and now we actually have to scrape the image URL. So let's go back to our workflow, and remember that the block to get images was called attribute value. So let's drag that, connect it to our flow, and double click it. Let's name it get image URL, and let's insert this piece of data to the image URL column. Remember that the attribute name has to be src, and in the selector options, wait for selector. So now let's pop open our page and click on select an element and select this image right here. I know it's not the ideal exterior image of the house, but in some cases that's just the way it is. So click on the image, select it, and it should be right here. And the next step is to actually close this tab and of course switch back to this original tab. So let's go do that right now. So let's go to our block section and select on close tab. Let's add it right here, connect it to our flow. We just have to leave it as it is. And then the switch tab block. This isn't 100% mandatory, but it's always good practice just in case. And here where it says match patterns, we actually have to put in the URL of the tab we want to go into. So it's this one, it's the main page where all of the houses are. Let's just copy and paste that and set as active tab. So yeah, just leave everything as it is and put the URL right here. And you don't have to put this close tab block inside of the loop, or else the whole loop will get destroyed. So let's just put it outside of the loop where it actually ends. So now let's go click on save and execute. So all of the flow should be working right now. It should open this house in a new tab. Yes, it's opening in a new tab. Now it should be scraping all of this information. And yes, it quickly opened the show more button and then it switched back to the tab and opened the new house. So that's just how it works. It's very fast. And this is the second one. Okay, I think there's an error right here. Okay, so there was actually another error that has never happened to me before. Here in the logs, as you can see, this error was actually in camera. And as you can see, in the second house where we tried to scrape the image, it says can't find an element with a selector, blah, blah, blah. And I'm pretty sure it's because, I don't know if you remember, but in the first house, I'm just gonna click it, there was actually a carousel, so more than one image. But in the second house right here, there's only one image. So the selector isn't the same, and that's where Automa got confused. But no problem. Remember, we just used the conditions block. So now let's use that conditions block again. but for the attribute value block. So before the attribute value, I just left this space open. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this conditions block right here, plug it next to the first part of the flow, and let's delete these paths right here. Okay, so the first path will be if there's a carousel, right, like it is here, and the second path will be if it's just a solo image. Okay, so let's add the first path, edit the path, and in add condition, let's change this path type to element exists, and this one should be the one where there's carousels. So select an element and select this element and click on the select element button. So that's it. As you can see, it says carousel right here, so it's all good. Then add another path and let's edit it, and in this case let's again select element exist, but let's pick this image here which isn't a carousel, so it's just a solo image. Okay, so this should be it. And okay, and for path 2 we actually have to pick another attribute value and connect it to it, but this one will be different from this one because it won't be for a carousel photo, it would be for a solo photo. So let's delete that because it was a copy, and right here let's open the realtor.com, select an element and select this solo image right here. So let's copy and paste it back to the selector, and now we can finally stitch everything together. Okay, so as a quick recap, the first path would be activated if the image is a carousel, and then it'll select the first image out of the carousel and continue with the flow. And the second path will be activated if it's a solo image, and then this attribute value will get the whole solo image and continue with the flow. Okay, so it should be good now. Let's click on save, let's close all of our previous tabs, and let's click on execute. And I really hope it's working right now. I'm sure it will work. Okay, so it's opening the first house. It should click this button right now. Yep, it clicked it very fast. It went to the second house fast. Okay, so this is the final test to see if it's working. And boom, it's now into the third house. Okay, so this house also just had a solo image, so it's great that we did that that instance. And this house as well had a solo image. Okay, so that's why you need to learn these conditions blocks. Okay, so it closed because we have the close tab right here, which means it's finished. And let's check our what? Okay, so this is very weird, but it's just a glitch. So if you export data as a CSV, and let's open this Excel file real quick, you can see that the data is just right. The price of all of the 4 houses are right here. The bedrooms of the houses are right here. The bathrooms, the address, the size, the description. See, the description is all good, and the image URL also perfect. So it's very weird that it's happening in Automa, but the data is correct, and in make.com the data should also look correct. So this isn't really a problem if you will export that data to somewhere else like make.com like we're doing in this video. But if you're just trying to see some data without sending it elsewhere and just seeing it in Automa, then it's a problem. So I hope they get this error fixed real soon, but what can we do? Okay, but back in our flow, as you can see, everything's working perfectly. So now to send this data to make.com, remember we had to use the HTTP request block. So let's plug it right here. And this is the step where we actually have to open make.com. Okay, so now I'm in make.com. I have just created a new scenario. So let's go ahead and continue. So as the first trigger, we will have to select this webhooks module and click on custom webhook. Then let's just add a new webhook and name it whatever we want. In this case, I'm gonna name it realtor.com LinkedIn. Then click save and copy the address to your clipboard. Now let's go back to Automa and paste this URL to the URL section over here. Now leave everything as is, and remember that in the body section you have to put this JSON snippet right here so it can send all of the table to make.com. Okay, so now I'm gonna run this flow one last time so we can get all of the data inside make.com. So just so you can see better, I'm gonna split my screen here. So in make.com, click on run once, and now it's waiting for a webhook. So let's run the Automa thing right now. And yep, it's running right now. So I'm just gonna put it in a quick time lapse so you can see better. Okay, this is the final house, and this webhook should be firing right now. Yeah, so it just fired, and if I open this data set, you can see the 4 houses with all of its precious data are right here. Okay, so if you don't remember, first we were going to use ChatGPT to do some copywriting to create a better house description with all of the data that we gathered, and then we would log all of the houses and its information in a Google Sheet to keep track of everything, and then of course post the whole thing to LinkedIn. So let's get started with ChatGPT first. So add a new module, search for ChatGPT, and select create a completion. Okay, so right now you have to connect your OpenAI account, which is super easy. I'll leave a video in the description below so you can check it out. But after that, in the select a method, just leave it as it is. And in the model, select the newest version, which is GPT-4o mini. Apparently, it's cheaper and better than GPT 3.5. So yeah, after that, just click on add message. In the role, select user. And this is where you put in your prompt. So right now, I'm just going to type in a very simple prompt. Okay, so I just wrote this simple prompt. I'm nothing too crazy. So the issue here is, for example, if I try to map this price right here, it only maps this already established 875,000 price, which is the price of the 4th house, as you can see here. And we want to create a description for all of the houses, not just the last house. So to do that, we have to add another module before ChatGPT. So go ahead and search for iterator right here. So let's go ahead and select the iterator, and here we have to select the whole data block. So none of these small pieces of data, but this whole data block, and click on OK. Okay, so now we actually have to run this whole thing again. So it actually counts the variables from this iterator so we can put inside ChatGPT. Okay, so it just ran, and yep, the data is the same. And in the iterator, as you can see, in the input, we have this whole array of data, and the output are actually separate bundles. So this is exactly what we want, and ChatGPT will cycle from bundle to bundle. So now let's connect ChatGPT to it, and in ChatGPT we should see the new mapping variable. So yes, as you can see, now we have the mapping variables right here, and now we can safely select these variables because it will cycle through the houses. So for price, we gotta select price. For bed, the bed. For bath, the bath. For address, the address. For size, the size. And the description, the description. Okay, so now that we have that, let's add the Google Sheet module so we can log everything into Google Sheets. So select Google Sheets and select the specific module that says add a row, because we'll be adding a row obviously. So add a row. Of course, you gotta first connect your Google account to it, and it's a bit hectic to connect your Google account to make.com, so I'll also leave the tutorial right below in the description. But anyways, here it's asking for a spreadsheet ID, so I'm quickly gonna create a new spreadsheet so you can see what we're talking about. And here it's asking for the spreadsheet ID, and I actually have the Google Sheet right here. So in the columns it has the price, the bed, the bath, and everything. So I'm just gonna select it from this drop down right here. It's called YouTube Realtor.com to LinkedIn. It's right here. Okay, and then it's very simple. Just select the sheet. This used to confuse me. It's this thing right here that says sheet 1, and after that all of your columns will appear right here. So this is some simple mapping. Just put the price from the iterator into the price section of Google Sheets, then the bed, then the bath, and so on. Okay, and once you've done that, click on OK, and that should be it for Google Sheets. Now the last step would be to actually post it to LinkedIn, of course. So add another module, click on LinkedIn, select LinkedIn, and select the specific module that says create a user image post, because our post will include an image. As always, connect your LinkedIn beforehand, but here where it says file name and data is where you actually put the image. And in this case, we only have the image URL. So in the data section, we actually have to add another module that's called HTTP. It's specifically the get a file, downloads a file from a given URL. So in this HTTP get a file, you have to put in the actual URL of the image so it downloads it, and then we have to plug in the download of this image URL right here where it says data. Okay, but pro tip, I know that sometimes you have like a bunch of modules and you don't really want to run every single one of them before you get to this module right here, especially if some modules charge per run, like some API costs. So in that case, what you can do is just right click the module you want to run and then click on run this module only. So let's just select this iterator and use this URL as an example and paste it right here and click on OK. So it just ran successfully, and now we can actually map that HTTP data. I think we have to click on OK first. Okay, it's not letting us. So in those cases, you just delete the module and add it again. So it was create a user image post. Oh, and see, now we don't actually have to select this map thing. It's already pre-established, but it automatically selected this HTTP get a file for the image. So far so good. Then for the title, let's just leave it empty. Alt text, let's leave it empty as well. And this is the important part, the content, because this is the actual what the actual text will say in the post. And of course, ChatGPT made the content for this post. So in the ChatGPT variables, just select result. I know there's nothing inside, but when it runs, it will have something inside. And yeah, that should be it. So now let's click on OK. Click on save, and let's run everything together. I'm gonna change this loop elements block just to 2, so I don't have to delete a bunch of my LinkedIn posts, and so we can save time. Okay, so now that we have that, let's run make.com. Now let's run Automa, and yep, I'm gonna go back here to the Google Sheets and LinkedIn. So let's just see what it has to say. Let's see what it does. Okay, it's scraping. Whenever it closes, it means that it's finished. So let's just wait until it closes. Okay, it just closed. Let's check Google Sheets. The data should be appearing right now, and yes. Okay, so the first one just appeared. Now the second one just appeared. Everything perfect. And now let's check my post, which should have both of the posts. Yep, so as you can see, perfect. The first the description for the first house and the description for the second house. Yep, everything's working correctly. It actually got some pretty good copy. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit generic, but still. And back in make.com, you can see all of the executions that every module did. So the first and the second one only had one execution, and the rest of the modules after the iterator had the amount of houses that we pre-established. So 2, 2, 2, and 2. So yeah, that was basically it. How to scrape houses with Automa, how to send that data to make.com and use AI or ChatGPT to create the copywriting, log everything into a Google Sheet for organization, and to finally post it to LinkedIn or any social media. And if you're still watching this video, then I really appreciate it. And yeah, I know this example was very specific regarding Realtor.com, ChatGPT, Google Sheets, and LinkedIn, but it's so you can have some foundation so you can go on and create automations that are actually important to you.